Dr. Kathy, it's great to see you again personally, and really an honor to introduce you to my Let's Parent on Purpose audience. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
It's a joy and an honor. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so I personally met you when we got to have you in for an event with our church with a previous guest of mine on the podcast, Christine Sneeringer. And you all did such a phenomenal job. I thought, man, my whole audience needs to hear your wisdom. And so our discussion today is going to be around a new book that you have released called Parenting Differently. If you're looking on YouTube, here's what it looks like. Parenting Differently: Raise Kids with Biblical Character That Changes Culture. And it's a great little book. One of the things I love about your writing, this is a readable book. It's one that moms and dads in the midst of the fire can read, and congratulations for figuring out how to say it and how to say it concisely. So
I appreciate that feedback. Yeah, I work to not overwhelm. I don't want to overwhelm the already overwhelmed. So I try to write, very practical insights with, enough wordsmithing to keep the reader awake while reading. So thanks for the feedback. I appreciate it. I love ministering hope and healing to parents. It's a tough job to parent kids well. So I appreciate people like you who want to introduce your audience to people like me. So here we go.
So can we start with a definition of character? Because you're saying raise kids with biblical character, and I don't want to assume that we all know what we mean. I feel like character is one of those things. I know it when I see it, but if you ask me to define it, that gets a lot harder. So what is character, at least in the realms that you're talking about, raising kids with biblical character?
Yeah, I actually appreciate that question because we do need to make sure we're on the same page. So I was interested to find out that character has its origin in Greek and Latin, and it means to mark or to engrave. And that makes total sense to me because our character is what marks us. It is our reputation. It's the bedrock of our decision-making. It is how we are known. If you and I, for instance, you and I both know Christine Sneeringer. If we were to talk about her, we would eventually get around to her character. It is what people want to know about. It's what is noticeable and actionable. Yeah, so it marks us. It's why it's so important that parents get it right for themselves and for their kids, because it's life, right? It's destiny. One of the quotes in the book from someone, I can't remember who said it, but the character is destiny. It really does control an awful lot of our lives.
So one of the distinctions that you make is the difference between character and obedience, and how we want our kids to obey. As a parent, I absolutely want to, but that just raising for obedient children is not the ultimate goal. So would you help make the distinction between the two and why our ultimate goal is character and not obedience?
Yeah, I'd love to. I agree with you that first-time obedience is God honoring. It certainly creates contentment and peace in the home. So I'm all about that. I think all of us listening know that you can tell a kid, be patient, be patient. Would you just be patient, 1,000 times? Or you can say, would you stop arguing? Would you just get your act together? And we're asking them to be obedient, and it doesn't help. Character transforms the heart through the work of the Holy Spirit. So character changes children and us so that we can be well and do well even when no one is looking. I mean, I think the goal is that kids will do well and be well even when no one is looking and the burden is heavy. So I'm not gonna not take the cookie to avoid punishment. I'm not gonna not take the cookie so I get praised by mom. I'm gonna not take the cookie even though she's not watching, because it's right to be right. And mommy said don't. And I love my mom and I want to honor my mommy, so I'm not going to do it. And then the burden is heavy. What if you're teased by the brother, or you're such a little goody two-shoes that you believed mom and you didn't take a cookie? No, you're good even when no one is watching. Character is what kids will take away from the home. It goes with them to their first job, to their relationships, to their academic, athletic, artistic pursuits. It's what's got to happen. And I think it's actually much more efficient than people realize. To teach character then transforms all the obedient situations versus just working on arguing doesn't necessarily help them pick up their room. That's such a foolish phrase. You don't pick up the room. Pick up the things in the room, right? But we tell our kids, go pick up your room. Like, how do you do that, mommy? Oh, my gosh.
Well, my kids act like I'm asking them to pick up their room. So, how could you ask me something so impossible? It's like, it's just stuff.
Yeah. So does it make sense though, what I was saying?
Yeah. And as a youth pastor, I spend a lot of time with 6th through 12th graders. And I have noticed something. There's a certain segment of students that we have that while they're in youth group, um, they're really good rule followers and rule keepers.
Mm,
And then
mm,
when they get out of the home, they go a bit crazy or a lot
yeah.
crazy. And it's interesting because it feels like, and I don't want to blame parents, because one of the things I realize about myself
Mm,
is
mm, mm.
this in processing a lot of parenting failures and everything on my part, is realizing, man, when I was 18 years old, if I would have dropped dead before the Lord, I wasn't going to get to stand before Jesus and say, well, it was mom and dad's
Mm.
fault that I did this. Like it's
Uh,
on me. However, I do notice that there seems to be a pattern of some of these that have very tight rules and expect a very high level of rule obedience, that once those kids are out of the home, and not under that firm grip, that something did not transfer. And
mm-hmm.
eventually they may come back to it, but they're, they tend to go pretty wild. And I'm wondering, so how do we go back, and this is the whole point of the book, but how do we go back, how am I training for characters so that when my child leaves my home and is in the dorm room of their college and their RA doesn't care about their morals whatsoever, that
Mm.
they make the right decisions? How do I start that process, and how does that look different than training for obedience?
That's so good, the way you said that. So what I would want is for parents to first of all get that right. And I love parents. It's why I do what I do. I understand that the dilemma is real. So just make sure that you are aware that you are separate from your children. You are a woman, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a wife, a mom. Yes, you're so much. Your kids have to figure out who they are separate from you. And that involves character. One of the reasons I wrote a whole book on character is that we have children not becoming who they could be. I know
Mhm.
what I know when God creates us, and I don't say that arrogantly, but the scripture says that we're created on purpose with purpose. He knit us together, wonderfully made. And Ephesians 2:10 declares that we have gifts inside of us yet to be used and discovered. So when he creates every child, he has got this vision for their life. And without character, the vision won't be fulfilled. The lack of character will get in the way of their purpose and their possibilities and their influence. And so we have to take the big picture in mind. I think, Jay, when a parent realizes that these children are agents of change for the glory of God, notice the title of the book. It's character that changes culture, and children today can change culture. I tell kids that when you're kind to your piano teacher, let's say that you start out, this is a true story, where you start out the piano lesson and the piano teacher, how'd your practice go? Oh, I practiced a lot, I did really well. And then you start to play the piece that you were supposedly practicing really well, and it doesn't go so well for you. And you're sitting there thinking, I bet the teacher just figured out I lied. And this one little girl admitted in that moment, she looked to the piano teacher and she said, Miss, I'm so sorry I didn't tell you the truth. I didn't practice as much as I just said I did. And I'm so sorry that I disappointed you. Like, she owned it. It was this amazing moment. And I told that little girl, you changed the culture for that woman. Your piano
Mm.
teacher was respected, was honored by your honesty, and went home and had a different night because of that, how that lesson ended up going. We got to convince kids of that. So, Jay, I'm rambling a little bit, but I think the big picture, parents have to keep the big picture in mind. Kids are created on purpose. They have possibilities we don't yet know about. They have influence yet to be achieved. And we have to help them become who God wanted them to be when he made them. And that means that character is essential. Rule following is legalism.
Mhm.
It's not relationship. It's not healthy. And it's why I think kids, just one more point, kids who are rule followers at home and go off to college or go off to work and don't handle it well, they don't trust themselves. They think possibly that they've been good because mom and dad made them be good. I didn't want to be good. I don't really know. I was following the rules to
Mhm.
avoid punishment. I wanted my dad to, like me, so I was a good boy or a good girl. But then they don't learn to trust themselves that I'm capable of more than this. So they go off, and now if there aren't rules, they don't know who they are and they don't know how to behave. It's a long answer. I hope it makes sense as you listen to it.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm processing through what you're saying, and I I, I would think somebody training simply for obedience, which ends up being rule following, the motivation is often to avoid punishment and part of that punishment could be just avoid the displeasure of mom and dad. Because for some
Right.
kids, that alone, my oldest daughter and even really my oldest son, the disapproval of mom and dad is more crushing to them
Oh.
than a spanking is to other kids. And so you got to be careful that like they're not a rule keeper just to avoid disappointment, versus character, which as you're talking about, it sounds like, okay, from a young age, I need to be doing a lot of vision casting in their
Mm.
lives. Not so much like, don't do this because you're going to shame the family name. But more, man, isn't it incredible that God created you to change people, and is putting you in situations? And it's been really neat. I have two sons right now who, one is 14, one is 15. And it has been really cool to kind of have some of these conversations. My 14-year-old just made the middle school basketball team. And so he goes to a little private Christian school where there's 3 kids in his grade, but he
Mm.
tried out and made the public school basketball team. And it's incredible.
It's great.
And he's inviting kids over every week to our house. And
Mm.
we're just reminding him, hey, remember, you are a missionary on that team. You're a missionary on that team. Whether you are the best player or the middle player or the worst player, like you are bringing. And so now like these kids are coming over and they're sitting at our dinner table and we're
Mm.
praying before we eat. And, we're not having to hit them over the head heavy with this stuff. But he is inserted into a culture to reach a culture that would not give me the time of day. And I've
Oh.
seen the same thing with my older son of like, I can think of this adult who is pretty anti-Christian. But we have been associated with through some leukemia journey that we've been in.
Mm.
And this adult loves my son and keeps inviting our whole family into platforms where we get to share Jesus
Yeah.
because they love my son so much because of his character, because they see the
Right.
way that he
Yeah.
acts and interacts. And so,
Oh.
getting to cast that vision for your kids, even at a young age of like, hey, we're getting to change people. I love that. And obedience will come from that is what you're saying, is like, it's
Yes.
not either or,
No.
it's a deeper root where obedience will spring out of that, because of the bigger picture. Am I on track with that?
Yes, thanks for saying that. Absolutely true. You begin teaching character. Don't talk about it and yell about it, but teach it, and do talk about it, but also teach it. And you'll get both. You'll get the Christ-like biblical character that makes God look good and sets children in a position to be influential, like your boys. And they will be obedient, because when you learn patience, you can be obedient. When you learn other-centeredness and flexibility and contentment, you don't argue as much. So absolutely, and we need to look for that. One of the things I talk about in the book is identifying the character qualities most associated with the disobedient action. So
Hmm.
if someone is listening who has a child who is argumentative or self-centered, and you see it because they don't share fairly or whatever, maybe you have a child who resents doing the responsibilities and the chores at home, you can use a chart that I have in the book to help you determine which are the character qualities that are probably not rooted well here, and begin to talk about and teach and model those, and then look for improvement in the obedient area. And then you talk about that and say to the kid, look, this is causing this. I'm so proud of you.
Hmm. That's really good. Speaking of character qualities, I know one of the things that you in the back of the book, there's, I think, is it like 48
Mm-hmm.
different character qualities that you're looking to build in, but you get into, I think it's, you say there's 3 that feel like they are at the core, that are like
Yeah.
keystone character qualities that many of the others fall under. Can we talk for a minute about those keystone ones? Because there's one in particular that I'm very curious about, but I'll let you go ahead. What
Yeah.
are the core qualities that we want to focus the most on?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, because the 48, I don't want people overwhelmed. There's a baker's dozen 13 that I stress as being vital. And then you're right, the top 13, the top 3 of the 13. Gratitude is number 1. Gratitude is a parent virtue. There's biblical and secular research that suggests that grateful people are many other things. Grateful
Hmm.
people are other centered, they're kind and patient, they're generous, etc. So not a Thanksgiving gratitude where one day a year we're going to say thank you, but a true gratitude internally that causes us to behave differently. And to the believer, right? To those of us who are Christ followers, there's many reasons to be grateful. So it should be who we are, not just what we do. And then joy is number two, not circumstantial happiness. Our younger generations, because of technology, believe happiness is their right. And yet joy is so much more fulfilling. You can't control happiness. It's happenings, it's circumstantial, but we can control joy. And joy and gratitude are siblings. They are very related. Grateful people tend to be joyful. Joyful people tend to be able to handle things. They're optimistic. They have a better view of life, and it's going to take a child very far to be joyful. And then the third one, which is fascinating to me, and it might be the one that fascinates you, I don't know, is self-efficacy. And if you've never heard the term, don't pay. Self-efficacy is simply knowing that you can be effective. So when you teach your children how to empty the dishwasher, when you teach your children how to help a little sister go to bed, when you teach your children why kindness is valuable and rudeness is not, then they are effective. They're able to be effective even when you're not there prompting them. And they're going to be confident. They're going to be more successful, more influential, and more purposeful. So it's a key. Those three go together. When we have grateful, joyful kids who know they can be successful, the world will change for them.
Mm. No, actually, so I understand self-efficacy, but being from West Virginia, I have to go very slow when I say that term because that's a big word for us up there. It's joy. So my curiosity is around joy.
Interesting.
First off, I feel like joy is one of those, again, we say we know, but it becomes very hard to define, especially, you talked about the difference between happiness and joy. I have found one good definition of joy, but I'm curious, do you have, when you're explaining joy to people, do you have a particular definition that you use? Because if we're training for it, we need to know what it is.
Well, that's a great question. What I say, I'm not sure if this will satisfy you for a definition. What I say in the book is that joyful children have a strong, positive, and great delight. So joy shows up as delight. It's something that's observable. It's strong, positive, and great. They enjoy celebrating life. This quality depends on forgiveness, peace, contentment, gratitude, and life purpose. And that sentence is in there because if you're reading it going, oh, my kid isn't joyful, or I'm not joyful, how would I become more joyful? Well, then, I'm not peace and content. Why is that? I'm jealous, I'm resenting, I'm hoarding, so we can begin to think it through. Joy affects identity and belonging. It's especially relevant to developing patience, kindness, other-centeredness, optimism, and energy. So again, if we're looking at the negatives in our kids, this book is designed to really help you. A dynamic relationship with Jesus Christ establishes consistency and vibrancy and allows them to rejoice in all circumstances. So for a Christ follower, joy is a relationship with Jesus that matters. It's not fire insurance Christianity, where I know where I'm going when I die. It's bring heaven down. It's abundant life. It's living as if Jesus has changed me. That's how I would define it to children as well as to adults.
That's good. The one that I it sticks in my mind. It's from the book. I think it's called The Other Half of Church by Wilder, I think. And I don't even think he made it up. I think he pulled it even maybe out of a secular feeling, but or a secular source. It was something to the effect of the feeling you get when you are with somebody and you know that they really want to be with you. And I thought, man, that is such a powerful definition, because you think the joy of the Lord is my strength.
Yes.
Well, the joy of the Lord knows me and wants to be with me. And that changes everything. And so like when I'm in a group of people and I know that they want me there, because he said joy is like a subset of other feelings, because you can be sad but joyful. You can be hurt but joyful, because that's true. If I'm with my wife and I'm sad, I still find comfort in the fact that I'm with my wife. Like it doesn't necessarily take the sad away, but there's something in there. My challenge, I'll be honest, I have a child with some special needs that really struggles to be joyful, really, and grateful, kind of better at self-efficiency in some areas. But I'm like really curious, how do I train for joy And I understand a special needs situation might make it harder and more extreme,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I feel like I understand how to train for gratitude better. I feel like I understand helping my kids to know how to do things on their own and encourage them instead of bailing them out all the time. So
Amen.
what are some just kind of regularly recurring situations where you say these are opportunities to help train for joy?
I will say the first thing I'll say, it's a great question, first of all. What comes to mind is how important realistic expectations are. I think when we can set ourselves up to be unhappy in a heartbeat, right? Where I'm going to get the biggest donut, or I'm going to get every gift I want under the Christmas tree, or I'm going to earn every excellent grade. We have unrealistic expectations on ourselves or on others will instantly cause us to be disappointed, angry, unhappy, and lacking joy. So I would encourage parents to talk with their kids about what are you hoping happens here? What will be a win in this situation, and what would be, a second place, however you want to word it, depending upon the age of your kid. And, just find out, are they self-aware enough? Do they know themselves well enough to realize they may not make the team, or they may not earn an A, or they may not be chosen for, representing the school at a spelling bee or whatever. And they're, no, I'm going to be the one. Well, what makes you think so? And then you listen to the story that they've scripted in their mind about how this is going to go. And then you teach them through example. I think we save old work to make sure that they know this is what you're capable of, son. This is what you've been doing. We're proud of you for this. Why are you thinking that this is, where you're headed? And listen to them. They might really know more about themselves than you realize. And they could teach you a thing or two. So realistic expectations, really, really important. Unrealistic expectations destroy us. And I could go on and on about that. So that's the first thing I would say. I think it's extremely important that we don't compare our kids. And I think it's extremely hard. I do talk to parents about don't parent the herd, parent each individual. I have a good friend who has triplets, and they're identical. And he introduces them as the triplets. And I took him aside at one point and it only took me 2 seconds. I don't think I had 5 words out of my mouth where he knew what I was saying. He goes, "Oh, you're right." And he now introduces them by name. And that's not about me. It's just an insight, but I think that's significant here for joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. That's not my original thought. So those are the first 2 things I would think of.
That's helpful.
Yeah. Good.
It's a hard, yeah. And I think realistically understanding just like with just about anything else you could put, some kids are more naturally athletic. Some kids are more naturally, they're going to, art can be trained, like artistic ability can be trained, but some of them are going to pick it up much quicker. And I think the same thing. Some people just seem to be wired for joy much more quickly than others do. And I know as a parent, like that can be a real struggle with the comparison thing. And it can then rob my joy. Like, why is this one so grateful for so little? And this one, what is that? The song from The Greatest Showman, Never Enough, Never, Never.
Yes,
it's like, that's the theme song of their life. So that becomes very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great insight. We are individuals. We do have, there's emotional stamina, there's physical, social, intellectual. So I think that's a really good point. Optimism would be a key. And in the book I wrote about resilient kids, I wrote a lot about optimism and pessimism. Was stunned to find out the role of optimism. So in this case too, and I think optimism can be trained, seeing the glass half full versus half empty, and talking to the kids and being a good role model of that. So I agree with you. And I also would say that there's training that can be done to lift the kids up to a higher standard of that joy, especially if they're saved.
Yeah. There's nothing like having the Holy Spirit inside you to empower these different things to grow. Regarding the training of character, getting out. Actually, let me just ask the self-efficacy. Are there mile markers, or are there particular things that you would say to mom and dad when your child is in this age range? You really should be putting like your kids should be owning these tasks, and then as they grow older, they should be owning these tasks, because that idea that we're not raising children, we're raising competent adult human beings that are going to be a blessing to the world. And so we need to constantly be building towards that. So are there mile markers that you see that you would encourage parents in the self-efficacy standpoint?
There are, not off the top of my head, but there are. In the book I wrote, No More Perfect Kids, which I wrote with Jill Savage, we actually have an appendix of age-appropriate responsibilities at home. Focus on the Family has an excellent list. I believe it is still on their website. If you go to focusonthefamily.com and search for chores, I think would probably be the search word that would bring it up. I love your question, because everybody at any age can do something. And they are responsible. They're family members. And so, mom does this, dad does this, and guess what? This is what you're doing. And kids want to grow up. Kids want to mature. So, hey, now I don't use chronological age. I don't say, hey, every 9-year-old in my house is going to do this. No, it's character age. Okay. Not every 13-year-old gets social media, even though it's legal. Not every 16-year-old drives. If I'm raising a 16-year-old who is still impulsive and irresponsible and argumentative and all of that, you don't get a license. But I'm 16, but you don't act like it. So, own that. So I would look for, again, character. Are they responsible? Are they patient? Are they honest? Are they kind? Then they get to stay alone maybe earlier than another kid in your family, or they get to go on a date with grandpa, but your other sibling, the sibling doesn't get to go because she's a bit more difficult. So, and I love the word responsibilities versus chores. No one wants to do a chore.
Yeah.
I don't want to come home and do a chore, but did you complete your responsibility? Which for one kid might be emptying the dishwasher. And then, you know what we've got to do, Jay? We have to teach them. So if you don't want them to if you're teaching a kid to load the dishwasher and you don't want them to put a bowl here because it blocks the water flow, teach them why they don't put the bowl there. Teach them why this type of silverware doesn't go in. Teach them so that independently of us, they can be successful, which is going to add to their joy, self-efficacy, and gratitude, actually.
In the beginning of that explanation, you mentioned a couple things that sparked another question I wanted to ask you. You mentioned social media, and you even mentioned driving. Driving is a form of technology. I'm thinking we are in an ever increasing technological age, and technology can be a wonderful thing, but I also feel like technology can retard the growth of many of these areas. And I'm curious your thoughts on that. And one of those, I was specifically thinking with the self-efficacy, children want to grow up and mature, but one of my concerns, this is as a pastor and as a parent, that technology is now thrusting things on kids before they have the ability to handle it. And it's so pervasive, it's become normalized. But then we wonder, like, why do we have the highest anxiety ratings ever? Why are suicide rates so high? Why are dangerous behaviors spiking? I'm guessing there's a correlation. So how would you speak into technology in regards to character growth and what parents need to be aware of?
Yeah, I love the question. The top 13 that I chose for the Baker's Dozen, I chose partly because of technology. Actually, joy and gratitude are huge there. Technology teaches us and our children to be entitled. I deserve what I want when I want it, which is right now, and I want it my way. So we start treating God like he's Amazon Prime. It's terribly damaging to our understanding of the God of the Bible and his authority and holiness. Oh my goodness, Jay, we could talk for an hour. We're not grateful, we're entitled. We're not joyful, we're happy. So we multitask, we X out of games we might lose. We only have to answer the phone. When I was a kid, we didn't even have an answering machine. That's how old I am. And so we had to answer the phone because we didn't know who was calling. And now when my phone buzzes or rings, I can look at it and go, oh, I'm not in the mood. So we create our own little perfect world. And no, that's not how the world works. And you honor others more highly than yourself. So I wrote this book partly because of social media and technology. And I wrote a whole book on that and how technology teaches kids that they can, that the world revolves around them, which is pride, that they can be happy all the time, which is damaging because they're going to make decisions to stay happy. One of the lies is that I demand choice. I must have choice. Jay, you and I know choice is a privilege. Today's kids think choice is their right. It's 24-hour a day, fill in the blank, right? You can choose your seat at the movie theater. Oh my goodness. I was just grateful if I got to go, so, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that it might be teaching our young people that they can have what they want when they want it right now. And then they expect you to treat them that way. So this is why they complain and argue, which is why joy and gratitude and self-respect, respect for others, and self-control are the next three on the list. And all of that is birth and technology. Nothing wrong with it if it's managed well in the home and there are limits. But this is why we need to teach character. Technology is teaching them that they can have what they want when they want it right now, right? Technology is teaching them that they can win any game they play. I asked a bunch of young adults, how many of you have dropped a class after a bad test? So these are kids that are out of high school, they're in trade or university. How many of you had a bad first test or hard quiz and you dropped the course? Unbelievable, Jay, the number of kids who raised their hands. I don't know about you, but if I had a bad experience with the first test or first quiz, I studied more. I didn't give up. We have generations that are giving up.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I dropped one class ever, and it was Calc 3, and it was after the midterm. And I was like, I am good enough at math to realize this is unrecoverable. And I never want to do anything with my life that would require me to finish Calc 3. And that ended up being part of what the Lord used to turn me into ministry, because you do not need Calculus 3 to go into ministry. But yeah, I mean, but there was a lot of wrestling and struggling before that point, and the struggle is real. I think the other thing about choice is choice debilitates. A certain amount of choice is good. And then I call it like the Cheesecake Factory syndrome. When I go to Cheesecake, they don't hand me a menu. They hand me a novel. And no matter what I choose, I'm missing out on 752 really good things. And so there's a tremendous amount of anxiety that comes with that. And I think our kids, that's a big part of it, is, that you can do anything in the world. You can watch anything you want to. You can be anything. Yeah. And so it's not even just comparison to everybody else, but it's the unbelievable amount of willpower that it takes to make choice after choice after choice in things that like we never had to worry about. And I think that sucks from joy. It sucks from gratitude. And then they also make poor decisions because they have too many choices to make anyway.
Oh, that's so well worded. And that's why character qualities like effort, diligence, perseverance, resiliency, discernment. One of the top 13 is discernment. Who are you, and who would be good for you, and what would be good for you? So again, teaching character, not telling and yelling, but really making an effort as a family. This week, let's work on this quality together. It can change them, and it helps them make choices. Choices are a fact of life. It's not something that you deserve all the time, but it is a part of life. So how do we make choices? And how do you discern when you've made a less than great choice? And this is where I write in the book about letting kids suffer from their own foolishness. Let them suffer the consequences of their foolishness. Don't rescue them all the time. Now, yell stop if they're going to run out into the road. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But, if your child chooses to forget that there's a test to study for, and I did word it that way, if they choose to forget that there's a test to study for, you don't always want to remind them. You need to let them go off to school and have that negative experience. And then when you hear them saying, oh, the teacher was mean, the test was really hard, you look your son in the eye and you say, son, is that true? Think a little bit harder about the grade that you earned. You were not given that grade. You earned that grade by the choices you made. Let's talk about that. It's very powerful. If a choice is one of the powerful words a parent gets to use, you chose to talk back to me. You chose to roll your eyes. You chose to slam the door. You chose to forget. You chose to treat your sister meanly. No, I didn't know. You chose. All behavior starts with choice, and all choices are rooted in a belief system, which is why a Christian worldview is so important.
Love that. Love that. All right. We're drawing down on our time, which is unfortunate because I could go 2 hours here. My favorite part of the podcast is it ends up being like personal free therapy for me as I process out my stuff. I just act like I'm interested for other people. Dr. Kathy, as we've talked, you have referenced some other books. And so as we close out, I highly recommend people get Parenting Different, Raising Kids with Biblical Character That Changes Culture. But some of my questions that I've asked, you're like, basically, well, I've written an entire book about that. Would you just highlight a couple of the different ones that parents may be interested in? I'll throw the links into the show notes because they're just such great resources.
Well, it's very kind of you. Screens and Teens, Connecting with Our Kids in a Wireless World is the book about the 5 lies technology has taught us. It's not a book about tech. It's a book about what tech does to us.
Hmm.
The book Start with the Heart is a book about relationship, correcting and complementing, consequences, goal setting. So that's a relationship motivation book. 8th Grade Smarts is my bestseller. It's about how kids are smart in 8 different ways and how to raise them up to be who they've been created to be. No More Perfect Kids is the book I wrote with Jill Savage, which is the book that has the appendix about the responsibilities in it. So people might appreciate that. I wrote Resilient Kids about a year ago. Resilient Kids is super important. Today's kids tend to want everything to be done for them, or they want everything to be easy. Another thing technology has taught them. So how do we help our kids rise up after a valley experience? I think that book is super important. The book about 5 core needs is called 5 to Thrive. And that's a book about making sure that Jesus meets your needs, that you're not trying to meet them by yourself. So appreciate you allowing me to kind of mention those. This book, Parent Differently, it might become the most important book I've written because
Hmm.
character is so significant to us becoming who God wants us to be. And it's really the way we glorify God or we don't. So I'm really glad that you wanted to talk about it. And Celebrate Kids, is our website. CelebrateKids.com is our website. We're all over social media. And of course, books are available wherever you purchase your books.
That's right. And you have a fantastic podcast as well. So
Thank
since I'm
you.
only once a month, I feel free to promote other people's podcasts because you got to listen to something else along the way too. But yeah, great. Is it Celebrate Kids with Dr. Kathy? I
Yeah, we
can't
have
remember the
Celebrate
exact name.
Kids with Dr. Kathy. And then my new podcast under that channel is called Facing the Dark, where we look at a
Hmm.
cultural moment and then I take the Celebrate Kids nuance to it. So that's called Facing the Dark. We have a Saturday podcast called Dr. Kathy Says. And we called it that because after people hear me speak, they go home and they say, now, Dr. Kathy Says, do it this way. So Dr. Kathy Says, Facing the Dark, and Celebrate Kids with Dr. Kathy, all at the Celebrate Kids podcast channel.
You are a busy bee.
Yeah, it's
So,
fun. I'm
hey,
so privileged to do what I do. So,
yeah. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. Love to have you back anytime, and
yeah.
just appreciate how God has gifted you to be a blessing to the community. So thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Jay. I enjoyed this and I enjoyed being in your church. I can tell that you're ministering well to your people, and I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you.